Los Pepes made a public announcement that they were going to resume their murderous campaign against him.
We were closing in on Escobar. We made him get to a point where he had to abandon his bodyguards and he was reduced to hide out almost alone.
With the exception of Pablo's family, every resident of the hotel has fled for fear of being caught in the crossfire between Pablo Escobar, the search block, and the Pepe's death squad.
The fear is so palpable that little Manuela, who was then 8 years old, was overheard walking the halls of the empty hotel, singing a little Christmas carol to herself that she'd changed the words to, and the words that she was singing were, "Los Pepes are going to kill my father, my mother, and me."
December 1993. On the run and at war with the state of Colombia, Pablo Escobar tries to protect his family from the vigilante death squad, Los Pepes.
He's desperate to get his family out of Colombia, so he has to continue making phone calls to the Hotel Tequendama. While Pablo is on the phone talking, Centrospike is listening in, and they fix his location to a neighborhood in Medellin called Los Olivos. Colonel Martinez positioned a lot of his men in parking lots in that neighborhood so they would be poised and ready to move the next time Pablo came up on the radio.
Hugo Martinez Jr. and the rest of the search block wait for another Escobar phone call.
Every time Pablo got on the radio telephone with his son, Hugo Jr. would be cruising the streets in his telemetry van trying to zero in on the precise location of the phone call.
My father was very clear, saying that the operations cannot go on if Pablo was not talking.
Desperate for a way out, Pablo turns to his son, Juan Pablo.
Pablo woke up in the morning of December 2nd, the day after his 44th birthday, and had spaghetti for breakfast, and then immediately got on the phone with his son, Juan Pablo.
Escobar agrees to answer a phone interview through his son.
He instructs his son to accept a list of questions from journalists with the intention of giving interviews that will play on the heartstrings of the Colombian public. The fact that the government is using his wife and children as bait. Juan Pablo asked his father for some coaching on how to answer the questions. He also warned Pablo that there were a lot of questions, so this conversation might take a long time. He tells Juan Pablo that they'll get back on the phone a few hours later. This, of course, gave the tip-off then to Colonel Martinez and his men that they could be waiting and in position for the phone call that was going to happen later in the day.
Indeed, he called again. We were already located in a house near the zone from where he first called.
Hugo immediately started tracking the signal, and the search block followed him out into the city. He's looking at a little monitor that has a line stretched across it, and the line either contracts or expands depending on whether he's getting closer or getting further away. And initially, he locates it in a building where he thinks Pablo must be speaking. And the search block launches a raid on this building. But immediately upon launching the raid, Hugo Jr. realizes that he's made a mistake.
I read the instruments wrong. They went inside and I realized he was still talking, and I was very surprised. I had to look again at the instruments, and I found out that there were things that produced an error in the reading.
The signal is bouncing off of water in a little canal running down the side of the street.
When I realized this and made the subtractions, the arrow changed immediately.
So he radios to the search block that he's made a mistake, and he races off thinking that the troops will then get back in their vehicles and follow him. But in fact, no one hears him. So Hugo Jr. and his driver are driving off by themselves, hunting down this signal, and manages to drive right down the correct street in Los Olivos where Pablo is staying.
He started talking again, and I followed the signal to the point where the equipment showed me the exact location he was in. I turned around and passed by the front again. And with the radio in my hand, I put my hand out the window and started pointing at the window in the second floor. At the same time that I was pointing, I observed the silhouette of Pablo Escobar with the phone in his hand. I was listening, and he looked through the window. We saw each other.
He calls me and tells me I have located him with zero margin of error. Furthermore, he tells me I'm looking at him.
And Colonel Martinez immediately tells him, don't go anywhere.
I tell them that they should wait for the search block, but if they had to confront him, to do so.
And so Hugo went around to the back of the building, and some of the men with him staked out the front door.
Pablo Escobar was very calm. We did not see him trying to make any escape attempts. He was very still, maybe waiting for luck to help him again. But this time he was surrounded.
Hugo Aguilar's team reaches the scene and immediately makes the assault.
Pablo hadn't noticed anything peculiar and was still talking on the phone with his son Juan Pablo when the explosive charge went off on the door downstairs.
We began going up the stairs. I was up front. Pablo Escobar said, "There is something going on here. I'll call you back." And he threw the telephone. He ran to the window and he went into the abyss.
Escobar's lone bodyguard, Limon, is the first to reach the window.
The man that was with Pablo Escobar came out of the house. He jumped and he headed in our direction, shooting.
Limon attempted to race across the rooftop and was apparently shot on his way across the roof. The force of his momentum carried him right off the roof, and he landed on the grass behind the garage.
And then Pablo Escobar appeared. He had two guns in his hands.
Pablo began trying to inch his way out along a wall that bordered the rooftop, looking for some avenue of escape.
He was talking to the police with such rage and shooting in and out of the house. When he was against the wall, we were not able to get a line of fire to hit him. He started walking to the front. And since the roof goes up, we started seeing more of his body. And at that moment, he fell.
When the firing stopped, I looked and I saw him lying on the roof. I took the radio and said, "Viva Colombia, Pablo Escobar is dead."
The world's most powerful criminal was dead. But just how Pablo Escobar died would remain clouded in mystery. December 2nd, 1993. Drug lord Pablo Escobar is gunned down on a rooftop in Medellin, Colombia.
Javier, they just killed Escobar. Like, what? They just killed him in Medellin. It's all over the press. So, I mean, I was happy. I was elated.
I became ecstatic. I ran around our office space, saying, "Hey, Pablo's dead."
Immediately, I traveled to the location with DEA agent Steve Murphy.
I was given the opportunity to go down on the roof to view the body, to visually confirm that it was Escobar.
And he climbed to the rooftop and began taking pictures. Members of the search block posing around the body with rifles like big game hunters. Murphy then gave the camera to the search block, and they took pictures of him posing with Escobar's body.
Photos of an American agent posed over the dead body caused an uproar in Colombia, where many were unaware that gringos were in on the hunt.
It is true that we Americans provided a lot of assistance to the Colombians. We certainly did that. But in the last analysis, the success was Colombia's. It was a Colombian operation from start to finish.
Colonel Martinez, Colonel Aguilar, these guys are truly great heroes in Colombia history.
I believe I have performed a great service to my country.
At the end, I considered a victory for the world.
While there was no question that Pablo was marked for death, how he died remains a subject of conjecture.